Hello, and welcome to the Mothers of All Crime. This is a podcast where we deep dive into mothers involved in infamous crimes and scandals. I'm Monica, and this is Crystal.
Welcome back to the Mothers of All Crime. I'm Monica, this is Crystal, and today we're talking about the infamous Kay Letourneau.
Yes, I feel like Mary or Mary Kay, however you want to refer to her, really kind of took over the media at the time and then resurfaced relatively recently
Yeah.
and became like another internet sensation.
It's a gripping story. I feel like it was the first of its kind in a lot of ways, but it also is relatable in other ways. And I think that there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of gossip associated with this case, particularly. So I think it's interesting also to look at the way, I don't know, that media viewed things, that everybody viewed things maybe in the 90s versus in our 2000s, 2020s kind of a view.
Mm-hmm.
Changed over time.
Yeah, because it really depends on what publication you look at, right? So we have one documentary, the autobiography, Mary Kay Letourneau. You have another one that I think was on Netflix that was a little bit more focusing on their quote love story. And you hear that referenced a lot of it was a true love story. And
Yeah.
it hears from the victim, quote unquote, the offender, quote unquote, and even people surrounding them are even saying they were truly in love. So it's a very bizarre situation, right? Where,
Right.
and then the short answer is she's a grown woman in her 30s who then dated, had children with, and married a minor. So
Yes.
it's an interesting kind of thing that they tried to portray even in the media. They were publishing these statements. So it's
Yeah,
kind of an odd one.
definitely. I mean, there's mixed opinions. I think we could just talk about the essentials of the case. And so Mary Kay Schmitz was married to Steve Letourneau, changed her name to Letourneau. They got pregnant like right away, dating in college. Her mom forced them to get married. They had 3 more kids. They were very unhappy. They didn't have any money. Mary was teaching at a school that went up to 8th grade, and her husband was working at like an airport, and they had 4 kids, and they had a mortgage they couldn't afford. And Mary was spending a lot of extra time with a particular student who has a very challenging name to say, but I'm going to attempt it. It's Vili Fualaau. He is a Samoan child at this point when she meets him. He's in 6th grade. He's 12 years old. And she thought that he was an artistic prodigy. Oh, I'm sorry. She actually met him when he was in 2nd grade because that's when she was his teacher. But they kept in touch, and she started taking him to extra classes for his art when he was like 12. And he had a single mom. His dad was in prison. So they were kind of thrilled at this teacher taking extra care and attention of their very talented child. And he started spending a lot of time at their house, like the Letourneau house. And eventually, one of Steve Letourneau, the husband, one of his relatives, called the police and said that Mary is pregnant and it's not her husband's baby, it's a 12-year-old student's baby. And that's how this really all came out and exploded.
Yeah, which is crazy, right? Just like the
Crazy.
short synopsis of it.
Crazy.
um, and this was happening in the West Coast. So you have, not that it makes a difference, but it was a relatively, I would say, middle class area from what I could tell. But Billy was really more growing up on the poverty side.
Yeah.
You could tell from pictures, he definitely looked a little bit older than he was. And he definitely seemed to struggle more from the academics and was much more an artistic mind, because they focused in on, in the documentary, how he really was older, like had an older soul, for lack of better words, where they described him having a mustache. He did kindergarten twice. He never really gave the feeling that there was an age difference between them. And Mary would kind of zone in on the fact that she wasn't his teacher when they started having their relationship, when he was going into the middle school. And they met in college. He was in college. So it's really manipulating those words, right?
Absolutely.
Yes, he was taking summer art classes, but he wasn't in college. He was
And she was driving him
physically
there
on a college campus.
because he was a kid. So
Right.
she was driving him there. Although there are many reports of him driving her car when he was 12, 13 years old and did not have a permit, did not have a license, and she would let him drive her car. Like, she did not view him as a child, but he very, very, very much was a child. And I think that the
Right.
documentary that you watched, the A&E documentary, the autobiography of Mary Kay Letourneau, it is really good. I really enjoyed it, but it's very much from Mary Kay's perspective and Vili at the time's perspective. And to me, it's very delusional. Like, I just don't believe a word that she says. And I feel like it's fascinating to watch someone talk about their narrative of something when it contradicts so many things that I know to be true. And I think that because of how their story kind of ended, they're able to reframe it. But I think that it leaves a lot unsaid. And Mary's
Sure.
very good
Yeah.
at crafting a narrative. I just personally think she's a pedophile. And I think that she dresses it up and you can say whatever, but I just like that's what I think. That's where I end up.
Oh, I think she is a child molester and sexual offender, but I do not think she's a pedophile. And I'm going to get into that later because there is a distinct difference.
I would love to hear the
But
differences.
for her, yeah, but for her, what I think is important is to kind of give the understanding that she wasn't unfamiliar with understanding ages of children, right? So she was married. She had children of her own, I think 4 at the time, if I remember.
She had 4 at the time, one that was 1 year younger than Vili.
Right. So she had a conceptual grasp of what children were. So we can assume, there's no documentation of this, but we can assume she's teaching her children at age appropriate things. Because you have a lot of people surrounding in interviews, the documentary, outside of their relationship, stating she was a good mom and she was very involved and she worked in an elementary school. So it can be assumed she had an understanding of what age appropriate things were. So this difference that she had with Vili is a little bit unique. So it seems that for some reason she zoned in on this one individual and decided he wasn't a child. Because like you said, she was allowing him to drive, letting him do all these things that she probably wouldn't be letting her own child who's the same age do.
Definitely agree with you there. But she did have other inappropriate relationships with students, just not sexual inappropriate relationships. She had very elaborate friendships with children that were her former students that would come help her at the school. And she would be talking on them. Like, I only know this because I read Greg Olson wrote a really good memoir, not a memoir, I guess a biography about Mary Kay Letourneau. And there's all these interviews and stuff like that with people that knew her when. And this is not mentioned in the A&E documentary because it doesn't fit with their narrative. But she had a whole gang of kids hanging out with her at the class. She would stay till 10 o'clock at night. She would have these kids over to her house. She would be on the phone with them constantly. I mean, to me, that's very inappropriate. And I just,
Oh,
and like they were
absolutely.
like 12, 13, 14-year-old kids. And my mother teaches 8th grade. None of those kids have her phone number. None of them have been to her house. None of them have slept over. They don't hang out with her alone. It's just not, it's inappropriate. And like to me, she doesn't acknowledge that because she wasn't having sex with them. So she looks at it as a very different thing. But I think that she had some very
Right.
blurred lines. I think that more so that Vili, I feel like her narrative now and her narrative then is that Vili is so special. And that's why what they did is okay because they're soulmates and they're in love. So it's not a problem. Other people are children. Other people are victims. Other people are predators. But
Mm-hmm.
not me, not him. We're special. And I think that that's something
Yeah.
a lot of predators say. And a lot of people who groom children say that. And I think that,
I think with, yeah, because you have this situation, right, where the narrative changes. And that's what's so different about this case is when it was happening, spoiler, she's no longer alive. But when she was alive and then the two of them were together, there was a consistent narrative with the both of them
mm-hmm,
that he pursued her and
mm-hmm.
she kind of gave in, right?
That's what
And
she says. Yeah.
that's the thing. Well, that's what he said as well.
Yeah.
Like you
But he's
have
married to his
interviews of
abuser.
him for many, many years. Absolutely. And I'm not denying that. I'm just saying that that's what's very different than a lot of other cases, right? You have this quote victim saying that he went after her, he's the aggressor. So, and then what I think she failed at, and what your point kind of is that is a normal preteen boy thing to do, right? Like have a
Mm-hmm.
crush on a teacher, might make an inappropriate comment, but that's when you shut that down. This is not appropriate. You put up that boundary. And she was more flattered that she was getting this attention
Yeah.
and then kind of zoned in on it, which again is where that predator line starts to blur and that relationship starts to build because not only is she feeling special, he's feeling special. He's got the teacher that everybody thinks is pretty and this one-on-one attention, kind of a lacking family home, needing that void that she gave him. So it really was this on the outside that they presented at the
Yeah.
beginning.
Agree.
Very,
I do think
quote,
that's their narrative.
lovebird.
For sure.
Yes.
Definitely. But I think we need to talk
And I'm not
about
saying that that's what it was.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I know that you're not condoning this, but I could understand like if so like I have been obsessed with this case forever. And so my opinions have ebbed and flowed and changed with different things that I've watched, different things that I've read, interviews, because they've done a lot of interviews. And so they say contradictory
Mm-hmm.
things and they're very charming, especially Mary. She is very good at presenting something and making you go along with it. And I think that
Sure.
that's why she's so compelling. And I think that the story has been very glamorized. And I think we need to acknowledge, of course, it's because she's a woman and this is a boy child that we're talking about. So the reaction of the media in the 90s, a lot of people, not just the media, but a lot of people, oh, well, what a lucky boy. What a lucky kid. Oh, man, I wish these teachers were giving out sex in my day. And I've heard that a lot. And I remember a similar scandal happening somewhere close to where I live. And it was a very similar reaction. Oh, well, he was a boy. He probably wanted it. Oh, it's fun. Like every guy's dream. And it's like, he's a child. So whether or not
Oh,
he wants
absolutely.
to do it, he doesn't have the maturity to decide that.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely. But what you're forgetting is this is also the first case where the quote victim is openly saying they pursued the person, they agree, they want to be in, like most other cases that had such headlines didn't have that connection,
But there are
right?
plenty of
So you have,
cases
that's why I
where
think,
I'm sorry. I was just going
no, I'm just saying
yeah.
that that's what's so different and why the media really latched on to it. Not only was she the first female that really kind of was taken to court and made this big example of, but also the first one that the victim is standing by her side,
So I
which
don't know if
also
that's
made
true,
it
because
very different.
I do think there are a lot of circumstances where younger girls are groomed and preyed upon by adult men, and then they're like, but I love him, we're meant to be, I pursued him, like, and it's just not viewed the same way.
Oh, yeah. You have boys that will be treated differently, of course.
Yeah, and I
But
just
with the addition of her being pregnant with his child, I think added that now another wrench in to, okay, how do we handle that?
well, I do want to talk about that and how that affected her criminally, the pregnancies. So I want to just take us back to her getting arrested. So she got arrested when she was pregnant, with Vili's child. He's 12, she's 35, she's pregnant. And because it's statutory rape, which is a strict liability, and there is no, but we're in love and he looks older, those things don't apply.
Mm-hmm.
But
Doesn't matter.
she was given a plea bargain, and she would only get 6 months in jail with 3 months suspended as long as she could go no contact with Vili. And after she did 3 months in jail, within days, she was caught in a car having sex with Vili.
Yeah.
And
Right?
that's when she actually went to prison. And she was already pregnant when she returned to prison. And she ended up doing a year in solitary when she was in prison because she was writing notes on her breast milk bottles for Vili. She never stopped pursuing him. And you could say it was mutual, but she's a convicted rapist from prison, still sending him messages when there's a court order. Like, in my mind, she's pursuing him. And the entire time, it's been her
Oh, yeah.
pursuing him. And this is what she wanted. And this is not optional for him. And he was in too deep. He's 14 years old and he has 2 kids with her. Like, he could have never seen her again, I guess, but he would still have the kids with her forever.
Right. So with that agreement, part of that was the sex offender treatment agreement, right? So in the state of Washington, which is where she was convicted, legal consent is 16 without a power dynamic. So if there's a power dynamic in consideration specifically for students, you have to be at least 60 months older than the 18-year-old student. So there was no wiggle room for her when it came down to this. So the fact that a plea agreement was even made is very surprising to me.
It's because
But
she
I
was
think it
pregnant.
was a lot of,
I
I
think.
don't necessarily think it's pregnant. I think it was media.
I think it's
I
media.
think they
She's a
didn't
woman.
want the
She's a
focus.
mother. She's pretty. She's white. She's blonde. She's not going to be held to the same standards as other pedophiles. And and I know, okay, predators. We can agree she's a predator. Rapist. She's definitely a
Yes, 100%.
convicted rapist. Child rapist is the charge. And she did not get the same consequences that a man would get in the same situation. She played dumb the entire time, which is so frustrating to me. She was, oh, I didn't know it was illegal. I thought it was only illegal for men to do this. Well, I didn't know. Okay. Well, the second, third, fourth time you're being arrested, you definitely know. You can only play dumb to such a point. And I don't think that she was held to the same standards that she should have been, because she othered herself, but also the media othered her. So there was so much scrutiny and attention. But she should have been held to the same standard, and there really shouldn't have been an exception made. I don't think, anyway. I feel like she got too many chances and she used it to abuse him further.
I think that she honestly, when it comes to the courts, I think she got just as many chances as everybody else does.
Ugh.
I think there's this misunderstanding with the justice system that people go in and they never see the light of day again. The majority of people get let back out. The majority of people aren't held till court. Like the fact that she's never had a criminal history and that she was given this plea is not surprising to me. Um, particularly with her media focus. Like the court systems don't like media crazes. They don't. And they don't like the focus, they don't like the attention. And the media really spun it, like you said, is this pretty female. She definitely played the dumb card. And but the difference is once she went to court, it was made very clear to her what the expectations were. She had an understanding of what the agreement was.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what she then violated. So I think after the first time, it doesn't matter because
Right.
she had this presentation, right, that she agreed to. It
Mm-hmm.
was a standard treatment for SOs. It's 6-month detention, 3-year treatment, 7-year deferred. So basically, meaning if she violated anything, she would then go to jail for 7 years. But she, I think, lived in La La Land that the rules kind of only would partly apply to her because she is a mom. And part of that restriction is no contact with children or minors. It doesn't matter if it's your children, they are
Mm-hmm.
minors, therefore they are counted.
Mm-hmm.
And she kept focusing on that she couldn't talk to her children. And I can't remember what I read it in some news article that she made a statement that it wasn't necessarily her previous children that she was so concerned about. It was her children with Vili that she kept harping that this infant needed her more than her other children, which rubbed me a really icky way because, again, you have these other children that were taken by their father, her ex-husband, and moved out of state because he was like, I am going to do everything I can to protect these kids.
Yeah.
And obviously, Vili is a child himself, and his mother is now raising her grandchildren, but they're local. So there's that quote, need to be near them. And she kind of had this delusion that okay, I won't talk to any kids because her teaching license got suspended as well. But that doesn't count as my kid. Like, no, minors are minors. And it was made clear to her by her attorney, by the counselor, by the court. We're not saying you can't talk to your children forever. We're just saying we need to do some evaluations. You need to go through the first steps of treatment and get everything settled first, and then you can talk to them. Like, she took it upon herself to then contact her children, contact Vili, contact all of these people that she knew she wasn't supposed to. And for me, I don't think that's necessarily her focusing in on like re-victimization or focusing on him. I think it's more of her focusing that that rule doesn't apply to me.
Yeah.
Right? Like time and time again, we see things with her saying, I didn't know, or that doesn't apply to me, or this is different because XYZ. I don't think she thought anything about anybody else but herself. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was very much, I'm going to do what I want to do if you like it or not. And it's all going to be fine. Because up until now, everything has been fine.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree with that. I mean, she definitely didn't think any rules applied to her, and I really don't think she ever thought she would have serious consequences. And even when she was dealing with very serious consequences, it was still not really settling in, and I don't think it ever really did. And I guess,
Hmm.
your reality is your reality, right? So she lived in hers.
Right.
Yeah.
And what also found bizarre to me is they didn't end up recharging her. So when she was released, I think it was like a day or two later she got caught with him or something like that, or
It
a
was
week
like
or whatever it
It was
was.
like within the week.
Yeah, crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But also not shocking, you know? But what surprised me is they didn't tack on more charges. They just stayed with the charge that they had.
Mm-hmm. Which is weird. I agree. I think I
And
mean, I don't know why they wouldn't have added additional. It was just she just lost her plea agreement.
right. And in all of her statements to the court, when you give your plea agreements, you can make an impact, like victims can do impact statements, and then the offender themselves can make a statement. And again, poor me, boo-hoo, her statement had quotes like, "It was morally wrong," or "Please help me to fix this," or like, it was very "help us all" was another one. Very nothing was accepting responsibility. I did this. It was not correct. It was just very vague of like, I mean, you say it's wrong. You can help me, but never once that I recognize, and I may have missed it, did she say that she did anything wrong.
Oh yeah. I have never seen any account or seen any interview by her where she's taking any kind of accountability. Everything is Vili's
Yeah.
fault. It's other people misunderstanding, her terrible husband. Like everything is someone else's fault. And yeah, I mean, that's what I just mean. She doesn't live in reality because she lived in a hell of her own making. And I think that,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
And so, speaking of, we have on a previous episode, we talked about with grooming, you kind of groom the community, right? You groom the family.
Mm-hmm.
During the trial, Vili's mother went in, and during her impact statement, she's pleading for the babies, which is fair. But her then statements turn into her son is not a victim. This isn't a crime. They care. Like she started, no, I don't want to say condoning it, but pleading for leniency that Mary would be either let out, not prosecuted, lighter sentence, whatever the case is. But I think this was a hard one because you then saw, if you rewind, clips of her crying in the courtroom that she didn't know what was happening to her child. But then a couple days later, she flip-flops and pleads for Mary. So it's that conditioning that she probably is conflicted because of that time period of grooming the family.
Definitely.
This woman has helped my kid. Look at all the things that he got. Like, it's that, again, the double edge that she's trying to internally battle because she also was groomed.
She was groomed. She didn't have a lot of resources. She didn't have a lot of education. She was extremely busy. She already had her own kids to raise, one of whom is extremely distraught and messed up because of this whole situation. And maybe she thinks it's Mary's fault. Maybe she thinks it's the state's fault. Maybe she thinks whatever. But Vili was noticeably extremely depressed after Mary was in prison. And she also now has custody of 2 babies. And none of her other responsibilities evaporate. You know, now she has to raise these children of her 12-year-old son because he's too young and too messed up to even get custody of them. So for her, there are emotional and financial reasons that she would want Mary to not be in prison. And that's why a victim impact statement is just a statement, and it shouldn't really be affecting the sentencing for this. Like she may be speaking in her own best interest, but is she speaking in the best interest truly of Vili or of the children? Like I think that could be argued, but I think that if you just can't afford to take care of them, and it would be easier for you if their mom got out of jail to take care of them, and you don't really care that she's having sex with your teenage son because she's already done it a bunch of times and he seems to like it, then there's really no reason that she would want Mary to be in prison. It doesn't help her that Mary's in prison.
Right.
And it's not like she's going to look like a good mom if she tells if she says that Mary should stay in prison, it actually kind of makes her look worse. It's like, oh, so you did let your son be alone with a monster repeatedly. So if Mary's not that bad of a person and you're saying that, and it's like, well, were you really that bad of a mom either for letting the situation happen? And it's like, I think we can all be bad moms here. And I think that that's probably more what it is.
Yeah. And that's what is tough with, there's a lot of stuff that supports the idea that those who are living in lower income areas and poverty and things like that have higher rates of victimization because their parents aren't home as much, because their parents might not be aware what they're doing all the time.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't necessarily make her a bad mom, but she's doing what she has to keep food on the table, roof over their head, probably sending her husband in jail money. Like, it's a hard situation, and I hope she feels bad that this happened to her kid under her watch, but it's at the same time of, you know,
I mean,
like,
it's all in context. It's obviously all in context. I feel like his mother, like most people, are just doing the best that they could. They're just doing the best that they can with the situation that they're in, with the resources that they have. And life is very difficult. It's very expensive. And when you're put in financial situations, you have to make terrible decisions sometimes. And people make much worse ones when it comes to money and finances. And I think that she had good intentions. And I don't think it was like that she was some bad, terrible person. But I just don't think that she was understanding the impact that this had possibly had on her son and on her grandchildren, and that maybe there were some pros for Mary going to prison and not just cons.
Right. Yeah. And so obviously she did go to prison.
Thank God.
She went in for the full 7 years. Yeah, right. Which we say thank God, but then also you have this moment where they're still in communication while she's in there.
Illegally.
And, well, at the beginning, illegally.
Yeah.
But then she got a new attorney and a couple things were turned over. So she was able to get supervised visitation with the children. She was able to contact Vili. She was able to get financial compensation from doing interviews.
When she was out of prison.
So
when she was in prison, she was not supposed to be speaking to him at all. But she was.
But, right, because you have her children coming in. You have his mother coming in. Like, anybody who thinks that she's not going to have communication with him indirectly doesn't have any clue what the prison system's like. Like, because it is so common for people to, first of all, they have nothing but time, right? They're going to figure it out if they want to. And also, it's so normal to have, for example, say you bring your grandchildren to visit their mom and you're going to talk about things that are happening at home. What's going on? Your kids are going to talk like, oh, daddy did this. It wouldn't even necessarily be like her efforts. It's going to happen. And I think it was naive for the courts to think that, particularly for someone who is not only obsessed with him, but also has children with him, that there would be zero contact for 7 years, I think is naive, personally.
For sure, and hard to enforce. But I think that, like you said, she had nothing but time on her hands. So she was plotting ways to get in contact with her teenage victim and using her kids to do that. And I think people do that a lot. Like, they put messages through babies. They put a note in the diaper. They write something on the breast milk. It's a common tactic because children are not going to get searched as much in and out of prison, or at least that's the idea. And so, yeah, people are going to do bad, terrible things that are illegal. But she also didn't think there'd ever be consequences.
Right. And you have it going back and forth, right? So you have people on the outside who are just as creative about getting messages to her, either directly from Vili or Vili's family, friends, whatever. When you're dealing with someone who's incarcerated, both sides of the fence are very, very creative.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
over the years, I've seen some pretty impressive stuff. But not that it makes it right. I'm just saying is it would be one thing, and this is where I struggle, like I go back and forth, right? Because you have the mental side of she 100% is a predator. She 100% groomed him, brought him in, and then this would have been, in a lot of circumstances, his opportunity to get away, right? 7 years. If he felt in the moment like a victim, this would have been his opportunity to remove that contact. He very easily could have reported it. So, and this is where I think this case gets so much view, is because is he a victim? Yes. But he himself didn't view it that way. And that's why you have this continuance issue. And 7 years later, he's sitting there waiting for her to be released. And that's what is, it doesn't make it right by any means, don't get me wrong, but it's more of that, like, it just shows how strong the grooming and connection was.
Yeah.
That he thought that this would be the best option for him.
Well, she took away a lot of his options by making him a teen dad at 12 and 14. But also, I think we talked about this on the grooming episode. When you've been victimized, you're more likely to be victimized again because it's a terrible blow to your ego, to your self-esteem. And even if he did not view it that way, I think by his actions, by his behaviors, I do think that there's a lot of evidence that he really struggled in the aftermath of her crimes, but also her conviction, which he felt a lot of guilt over. And I think that that's not uncommon either, that victims of sexual abuse feel guilty. They feel bad that someone's in prison because of them, even if that's maybe not how I view it, not how
Right.
you view
It's
it.
that,
But it's like, this happened because of me.
it's the disclosure phase. Yeah.
Yeah. And
the
so
disclosure phase for it.
she's in prison because of me. I'm at home with our kids. He dropped out of high school. He suffered with alcoholism. He attempted suicide. He went through a lot of struggles, and it's we can't know what his life would have been like without Mary entering the picture, but
Mm-hmm.
it altered the course of his life in a way that I think is further abuse of him. And I think it limited his options. And I think he could have maybe gotten away from her if he also got away from his family, who, because of the children, was accepting of her. And because of the children, he had a lot of additional responsibility. So him just taking off and not having contact with Mary, it was much, much harder because of the kids, who she still had access to.
Oh, absolutely.
So I just feel like he was kind of
And
set up to
not
fail.
only that, oh, yeah, but then you have society supporting them.
Yeah.
So they got out. Well, they got out. She got out. They
Mm-hmm.
got engaged very publicly and made a bridal registry. And strangers on the internet bought every single thing on there and sent it to them in support of their relationship.
Yeah.
So as a younger person, like, take away the fact that he's a teenager, right? Let's just pretend that he's in his early 20s making a really bad decision. If you have everyone around you, including strangers, telling you they support you, you're doing the right thing, fight the system,
Absolutely.
it's going to reinforce whatever decision you're making. And
Absolutely.
that, I agree, like, I think he got cornered. That made it really tough for him. But one thing I want to talk about is specifically her SO restrictions. So she became, when you get released after being charged, she had 2 counts of rape of a child in the second degree. You are required to be a registered sex offender, which has all kind of restrictions of its own, including like where you can live, where things you can work, perform things you can attend. Yet it didn't seem that those restrictions applied to her. And I found it bizarre because you have her attending school events and kind of working as a paralegal and attending things for her kids with other kids around. Not a standard thing that registered SOs are allowed to do. So again, the rules didn't apply to her. And that's where you have this reinforcement for her that what I'm doing is okay and what I did is okay because this rule goes for other people, but that rule doesn't go for me. Other SOs can't go within 100 yards of a school, but I can go to my kids' play in the school. It's that reinforcement of what her choices were and their quote love is okay.
It's love wins is what she's going for sure. She thinks this is a beautiful love story, and I do think it has been reinforced many times. And I mean, in the early days, a book was published only in France about their love story because it's viewed a little bit differently over there. And then I think that Mary, you could call her infamous, but I think she was also famous. And Vili was an aspiring DJ also. And when Mary got out of prison, he did hot for teacher nights at his DJing stuff. And it was like very popular. And I think that, and she would come and she would dance and she would wear her red lipstick and they would take pictures because it would go viral for the time, you know? And I think that they were known for this. They made money doing it. They got a lot of praise when they got married, and people were like, well, okay, all's well that ends well. You guys proved us all wrong. And I just could not disagree with that more. And I think that people marry their abusers all of the time, and it's not romantic. And I feel like that's what happened here.
Yeah. Well, I personally agree with you, but I'm trying to like bring in the different perspectives that I've seen on different articles and stuff, because it's one of those things that as an intellect, we know the patterns, right? We know it's you marry your abuser because it's comfortable, or it's not always bad, or but look at our love. And like you have these different things, but at the same time, you also know what you're taught.
Yeah.
And this is where I have this, it is a theory that is both supported and disproven that you can become an abuser by being abused yourself or witnessing abuse. So certain actions, if you see it, it might not be happening to you, but if you see it, you're then going to repeat it.
Sure.
Mary's father was accused of having an affair with one of his students.
Yes.
Mary's father has been proven to have had intercourse with underage persons.
Yes.
So you have this example in her life that this is normal and this is okay because nothing happened to dad.
Well, Mary's father fathered two children with his student when he was teaching in a college class. That's what happened with that.
Right.
And that's
so
why her parents separated.
Example.
Yeah. But they got back together because they're Catholic. You know?
Yeah, you have this example.
Yeah, and her father was her hero. Absolutely her hero. And he was a senator and he was in Congress. He was like a wealthy man. He would solve her problems with money and he was the greatest person ever. So him doing anything wrong, like that's unthinkable. So it's probably because her mother was so frigid or something, which is also, I think, definitely what she grew up to think. And I think she blamed Steve for a lot of her relationship with Vili. Like she would have never been seeking that if he had been a better husband.
If you were a better husband, you loved me more. Yeah. We like you gave me the attention. Oh, 100%. There's tons of interviews of her saying
Definitely.
that her marriage was lacking all kinds of stuff. Again,
Yeah.
somebody else's fault.
And her father was dying of cancer
and
at the time. So that's another reason, excuse, whatever, that she uses for why she was so vulnerable to the relationship with Vili, because her husband was not supporting her through that terrible time, which would be awful, but it's not an excuse, obviously.
Right. But I think what you've kept trying to fast forward with is Vili does eventually kind of things click for him.
Kind of, yeah.
And I think that it, like, not necessarily 100%, but a little, because there are comments and interviews and things like that more recently, and he did file for divorce from her. And
right.
It's
well, they didn't.
It starts to kind of come into sense.
So they only filed for separation. They didn't legally file for divorce, but they did separate. They separated in 2017 and it was official in 2019. But they never got divorced. And
yeah, the divorce went through in 2019.
No.
Oh, I have that I found an article that said he was divorced in 2019 and that's when he moved to California.
Oh no, I'm pretty sure that they never got divorced.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know. No,
if someone finds out the real answer, let us know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they never actually got divorced and they just separated. I mean, so they Yeah, I don't think so. I think it was just a separation and they never got to the divorce. But that may be because their separation was finalized in 2019 and then Mary got diagnosed with colon cancer and died a little bit less than a year after that final separation. So maybe they just never got to it?
Yeah, I think she passed in July of 2020 at 58.
Yeah. And he was with her when she died.
Yeah, he came back because he had moved to California. He came back to take care of her and became her primary caregiver the last couple months of her life, which is nice thing to do.
Sure.
But at the same time, because you have, while she was alive, anytime that a conversation came up that, are you guys having issues? Why did you separate? Why, like, asking anything like that, she would shut that down real quick and didn't really allow anyone into that.
Right.
And I have mixed feelings about that because, like, as a human being, you don't necessarily want, like, taking off the fact that she's creepy and horrible, but you don't want to announce why you're having issues because everybody has issues. And, like, you don't want to tell people why you're getting separated. Like, I can understand that.
I definitely understand
but
that
I
as
also
well.
think because, yeah, and, like, I want to keep that private. Like, we can tell the good things, but I don't want to talk about the bad things. But then you have the fact that they are, quote, media famous, like, and you take the good with the bad, right? Like, you clearly have a media sensation. You talk on all these talk shows. You have to be able to be like, hey, we're real people. You want people to accept you, then tell the good with the bad. Talk about the fact that you guys have issues and the age difference is a problem and blah, blah, blah. Like, you can't just sit there and be like, nope, I married my 12-year-old student, had babies, but we're perfect. Like, no. Ew. Like, and I think Vili would have talked about it more if she wasn't always around. Like, it seemed like she was always around.
I think she was very present, even if she wasn't physically present. I think he was the beta of that relationship for sure. And Mary was very much the alpha, and she called every single shot. And I think that he couldn't say much So she got to present her narratives. I guess he could have said whatever he wanted, but I think he would have had to deal with a lot of consequences with that at home. And I
Right.
have seen
Right.
speculation,
Like
though,
repercussion.
and I don't know if there's any truth to this at all, or if this was just like a suspicion of when they originally separated, because they separated and then he withdrew the filing and then they separated again. And part of that, like part of the rumor mill, was that Vili wanted to open a marijuana store and he couldn't do that because he was married to a felon. And there was like restrictions, I guess, in California about getting a license to operate a marijuana store, and that maybe they were just going to divorce on paper, essentially, and that there wasn't really a plan to actually divorce, which is possible. I think it's also possible that it
Sure.
wasn't about their age difference and there was other issues in their marriage, and maybe after the kids grew up and moved on, maybe they're also, empty nesters. Things happen. And I mean, when you're an empty nester in your very early 40s, that's also late 30s. I
Right.
mean, you're in a different place at that point. And I think that
Right.
plenty of people, are married for a long time. Stuff doesn't work out. People grow apart. Things change. People cheat. We want to do things in different directions. It could have been anything. It maybe wasn't even about their age difference, but I agree. It's crazy to pretend that their age difference wasn't going to become a problem if it already wasn't.
Right. And they also self-proclaimed were going to couples therapy. In a lot of cases that I'm aware of, when you're going through couples counseling, a lot of time they recommend you doing personal therapy as well, like in conjunction.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I also wonder if he was going through this personal counseling and things started kind of clicking for him of
Maybe. I mean, I think
maybe there was a manipulation here and maybe this isn't as a perfect love story as I have come to believe that it was.
definitely could be. I think as her shine wore off, he probably felt resentful about things. And the problem with Vili is he doesn't say much himself. There's a lot of a source close to him, a friend of the family, whatever, an acquaintance of Vili. It's a lot of people speaking for Vili, even now, where I've seen sources say that he sees things clearly now and realize it wasn't a healthy relationship from the start, and basically that his perspective has changed. And that could happen for a bunch of reasons, but definitely in couples counseling, I would think that would be something that would be hard not to talk about. So I'm
Right.
sure maybe they had to talk about things that they hadn't talked about before. But there was a reason that they went to couples counseling in the first place 10, 11, 12 years into being married. So I think that they probably had a lot of issues.
And I do think they had to, because the reality is you are generationally different. You got into this relationship by manipulation. And I think when you have this situation of like, hey, I didn't get to do all these things, there's a resentment there. If you take out the child assault, manipulation, abuse, it really is like, even if they were the same age, there could be resentment there because like you became an adult at basically 13.
Yeah.
And you aren't going to be able to live the same way or end up living the way you want, or the dream, or your dream has to start at 35, 40,
Right.
which is a different avenue.
After having adult kids and dropping out of high school and having all of these hardships and suffering in all these ways and being famous and not being able to have a normal life, like, he probably had a lot of resentments. But I agree. I honestly think if a 12-year-old got another 12-year-old pregnant, they would have a lot of resentment towards each other as well, especially when you look 10, 20, 30 years into the future. Yeah, that messed up your life. Yeah, things are different. Yeah, now I'm stuck talking to this person that I knew when I was 12, And maybe I didn't have good decision-making skills then. Maybe I don't want this person in my life forever. And
maybe your 12-year-old doesn't make good decisions.
yeah,
Weird.
maybe
It's like they shouldn't be making them.
exactly. Maybe this is why this is a strict liability statute. Maybe this is why this was wrong from the get. And I think that
Yeah.
when things are still, when it's them against the world, when it's them raising their love children, when it's them being supported, when it's them whatever, it's more fun, it's more romantic, it's more sexy. And then when you're just living a boring life together with this old woman, I mean, yeah, it's gonna wear off. Just reality,
Yeah.
sinks in. She's in her 50s, you're in your 30s, she's not hot anymore. Like, now what?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's got to be awkward. And then also with the revamp of the new media craze, right? So before in the 90s, they were having a lot of support from outside people. And I think when you look at the media now, it's really zoning in on the fact that of this is illegal, this is sexual abuse, this is abuse of a child. It's really zoning in on that aspect. So you know that they would have seen it. You know he was exposed to it. So I wonder if that also played an impact because it has that shift of media presence from somewhat supportive to very, very against.
Yeah. Although I do think that they still had supporters while they were still pretending to be happily married, especially when they present it that way. Especially people who, I don't want to, accuse a giant group of people of anything wrong, but I think maybe people who have their own proclivities and their own ethically questionable things that maybe they think about, maybe they want to do, maybe they think is okay, and then they see someone living this life and saying fuck you to the legal system, you're going to support that. It's like, yeah, you go, Mary, you show them. 12-year-olds are cool too. Yeah, we should date them. I really feel like that's where a lot
Yeah,
of her
I
support
definitely
came
think
from.
I think that was some of it. I don't think it was all of it.
Yeah, it's other delusional
Because like
people.
you said, she's very good at presenting this fantasy. Um versus also the people who tend to have these proclivities aren't super public about it. And by publicly supporting her would have brought attention to themselves because after her case went through, a bunch of cases came to light of female teachers interacting with sexually with students. So I think there definitely was a portion of their support there, but I also think it was just this image that she managed to give off, and the between the two of their interviews, it comes off, if you just watch that,
Yeah,
it comes off like a love story. It comes off very supportive. It comes off like, you're right, let them live their life
I
until
know.
you dig into it.
And isn't that crazy? They'd already filed for separation and he'd withdrew it before that documentary was filmed. And then they separated again after that. And that is not the vibe that you get from them together. This is a
Yeah.
glowing love
And it's not
story.
even
Ugh.
Yeah, it's not just that documentary. It's the majority of interviews they did. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I used to feel
And
like I was in the minority, honestly, of people that felt like she was a monster. I feel like that opinion has become more popular in these newer times, which I love, but I have always felt this way that I ultimately just feel like she ruined his life. And you can ruin a man's life, but when you ruin a child's life, I just think that that's wrong. And I just think that she got
it's different. Yeah.
way too much slack. I think she was given. I think she was given too much credit. I think she was given too much access to her kids. I think that she was allowed way too close to schools. I think maybe if Vili had gotten bored with her sooner and she had not spent as much time in prison and she'd been able to teach, oh my God, then this would have happened again. I actually don't think there was anything special about Vili or her. I think that this was a crime of opportunity and a delusional narrative that after getting caught was even more important to stay with it. And when you're 12, you could think you're in love for sure. But I think that this was a grown woman manipulating a child's emotions because of her own deficits. And I think that it just gave him it took away all his opportunities in life, which he could have maybe broken out of, but it would have been very difficult to do.
Yeah. No, I agree that I think she definitely took advantage of a child. I do think she is more, and this is just a personal pet peeve of mine, where the term child molester and pedophile get used interchangeably. Um, I think she definitely was more of a child molester, which basically is an individual who uses a child for sexual exploitation, using sexual gratification, emotional gratification for themselves from the child. Versus a pedophile, that's actually it's a DSM term, where that adult has to have like long-term reoccurring fantasies of a prepubescent child, and you can actually be diagnosed with that.
Sure.
So for her, I think it definitely came more to the emotional power, the power over the person, the control, I think for her, just from different avenues, is it was more about the feelings that she got and the power that she had, the excuse of not applying to her than it was sexual. I think the sexual part for her was just an added bonus. And I don't think she necessarily was having all of these previous thoughts. And there were experts during her trial that did test her and interview her, and they didn't find pedophilia. But again, it's a hard thing to diagnose. I think she wanted the control and sexual exploitation and the health and the welfare from the child, and not so much about this whole planned fantasy that she had. I think that she blurred lines and convinced herself that it was okay and lived in this delusion.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to take back that I said she was a pedophile. I think that she is just a regular rapist. I think a child rapist.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I agree. I don't think it was about. That's what I mean, though. I don't think it had anything to do with Vili. I think that she saw a
Yeah. I think it was this
situation.
delusion she made.
It's delusion. It's a series of choices that she made, and it's the power that she felt from it. And the sex was part of it, but I agree. I don't think that's the main part of it, and I don't think that's usually the main part of it when it comes to rape. I think it's more power, control, proving that you can, proving that you can do anything, that you don't have consequences, that everyone just lives to serve you, basically. And I think that I that's why I hesitate to say that, that maybe I feel differently now because Vili feels differently about it. I don't. I feel the same about it because I feel like it never had anything to do with Vili and that he was just a victim of the situation. And I think that this could have happened again and in other situations. Like, I think if she'd gotten away with it this time, hadn't gotten pregnant, whatever, this could have and would have continued. Maybe not kids, I'm not sure, but I think if the opportunity presented itself.
I don't know if she would do it again.
Well,
but I
thankfully
definitely
she's
don't think
dead.
Right, she can't now.
Oh, so good.
But I think that there was something that she zoned in on with him. And in our grooming episode, we did talk about like these predators find something and they zone in, and that's your weakness. That's your vulnerability. That's your access point, right? And I think she found that with him and kind of latched on and kind of rolled with it, really. And why do you need others? If like she just, I don't know. I think there definitely was some kind of other psychiatric issue because she really lived in this delusion of herself and this la la land.
Well, she was diagnosed with bipolar at one point during her prison stay, and she was on medications. But I don't know if that diagnosis really stuck. She was psychologically evaluated a bunch of times, and there's different findings. I would say definitely delusions of grandeur is her main symptom. I'm not sure what diagnosis she has, but she was not mentally well. She was not capable of living in the same place as everyone else.
Yeah. Well, I think we covered most of the two of them. It was kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I hope this was somewhat enjoyable to listen to, but I feel like there's so many, I've listened to so many podcasts going through like the trial and the whatever, and it's like it's been beaten to death, and I feel like this was just like kind of nice to just talk about, and it's such an interesting case, and it's so niche for our podcast, and it is interesting to hear your like criminal justice perspectives on it. And I don't know, this is one of my favorite cases, so I'm always happy to talk about it.
yeah. No, I think what I struggle with is like knowing a little bit more about how like sex offenders are tried and sentenced and things, that I wish the idea of like they go to court and then it's all done and they don't talk to their victims, and like
Yeah.
I hope I didn't present the idea that like this is expected, but I hate to say it, but like it's not abnormal. And that's what's so sad, is there's not a ton of protections out there to really enforce the no contact, right? Like restraining orders, for
Absolutely.
example. Like huge pet peeve of mine.
Absolutely.
Someone can violate a restraining order and they go, "Oh no," and that's it. Like
Exactly.
and
And
it's
I
one of
think
those things like I wish the court system did a better job at protecting the victims. I wish they did a better job of following through of like, "Hey, we're going to hold you until court," or like ankle monitors or whatever the case is. But unfortunately, it just doesn't work out that way most of the time.
I think also with someone like Mary, who is extremely manipulative, extremely intelligent as well, she was always going to be able to find loopholes. She was always going to be able to find ways around things. And there really are no laws that can protect everyone from someone like that. It's a devious person.
Yeah.
I just don't like that she is somehow looked at differently because of her appearance. That to me is infuriating. And I like to look at her as like a
Yet
creepy
again,
middle-aged man.
so common.
Yeah.
So common and so unfortunate. And that's not
But
even just female sex offenders. That is just females in general. Like
absolutely.
they tend to get a lot
Absolutely.
lighter sentences, a lot easier to manipulate the system. That is changing. But in the
male
90s
sex
it was
offenders
still
don't
in
get
it.
enough time either. Male sex offenders also go out back on the street, also get in touch with their victims, also continue to harass and abuse people. There are so many people who have been convicted of sex crimes that through loopholes figure out how to reintegrate into society and get back with their victim, get new victims. It's unfortunately such a huge problem that I don't know how a court system could possibly prevent all of it. I mean, other than detaining them permanently, which has its own issues. But I mean, I think that the amount of time that Mary did was beneficial for society in many ways. I think that for Vili, it was ultimately better that he was 21 when she got out of prison. He was an adult, and he went to the courts and he asked for the restraining order to be dropped. That is an adult making a decision. Whether or not he came to that decision because of childhood abuse, a lot of people make bad decisions as adults because of abuse, because of terrible things that they've endured. You still get to make your decisions.
Right.
So if he at that point decided, I want the restraining order dropped, there's literally nothing that the court can do at that point. because all of the points against them, because this was not a violent rape, this was statutory. And people grow up and marry their statutory rapists all the time. This is not uncommon. Yeah. This is just weird because it's an older woman and a younger boy, and because of all the circumstances involved. So I think that I would have preferred her be in prison for life. In my opinion, I think that's what she deserved. I think that Vili was a victim and that his family and the media exacerbated that. But at the same time, I'm not really sure what more sentence, like, other than just putting her in prison forever, I don't know that there's anything else anybody could have done.
There are some people who believe that sex offender therapy works. That would be the alternative argument that I think people might suggest, is you can get treatment and not be a sex offender anymore.
Yeah.
It's very controversial, and I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole because it will be another hour in.
You know, I do think that would be a great episode, talking about like women in, well, we could talk about in general sex offender therapy and whatever. I know they did try that with Mary.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think they lasted like they didn't even go into it with her because she refused to cooperate.
Well, she wanted to bring her baby.
That was part of her original sentence. Yeah.
Yeah, she wanted to bring her baby. She was like, how many men in your program have just given birth? Ugh, her voice was
but
grating.
Again, using her gender to manipulate the situation. So
yeah, well, she would use anything to manipulate
any
it.
Final thoughts?
Well, I just hope that
Miss
Vili,
Mary?
I hope that Vili is doing well. He has a new child named Sophia. He's pretty private. I don't know who his current partner is, if they're still together. I couldn't really find much about that. But he is alive, well, has 3 kids now, and both of their children together have babies now. One is pregnant, one has a baby. So they're grandparents, and I hope that everything is good with them. How about you? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I hope the best for Vili. I do. I think he's got a lot of emotional stuff to unpack if he hasn't already. But I honestly think I focus on a little bit more of both of their children. Particularly with the resurface of this case and the media outrage that came a couple years ago, and even currently, their children are very involved in interviews that they're not actually a part of. Their children, all 6 of them, are very public. You can figure out who they are very easily. So I hope that they are doing okay and they're adjusting to the comments that they're probably receiving, because the internet is mean, and
Absolutely.
teenagers and 20-year-olds are mean.
Absolutely. I've been mean on here as well.
So
I do apologize if any of the Letourneau or Fualaau kids are listening, but I do stand by it. And
listen, it's all an opinion. I think it's just more of the fact of like, they had no control over what happened and what they were born into. And I just hope that they're taking care of themselves and their mental health and what comes along with being the children of a child and their teacher. Yeah. So I think they're the ones that I would hope the best for. And I mean, obviously, no, I don't want that for Vili and I don't want that for anybody else. But at this point, with the second wave of media, they're the ones that I think are going to take the most heat.
Yes.
That's my only other thought.
No, I agree. And I do think that the Letourneau kids, it was nice that you included them in that, because I do think that they get kind of, thrown out with the bathwater here when they were so deeply impacted by this happening. Their family falling apart, their mother going to prison, her losing custody of them. I mean, that is horrifically traumatic. And I also could understand wanting to ultimately have a relationship with her still, and her husband and their kids. I mean, this is still your family at the end of the day. So I have a lot of empathy for them.
Yeah.
but not for Mary.
Right? Yeah. No, Mary, good riddance.
Yeah.
I mean,
Bye.
that's mean, but
No,
I
it's
kinda mean
not.
it.
Honestly, it's not. It's not. She's like unrepentant and awful, in my opinion. Obviously, these are just our opinions, but I stand by them.
Yes.
And I think that we can leave
Yep.
off here and pick back up next week with our next mom.
Yes. Talk to you next time.
Bye.